going to be getting started. This is the first of the month. We do it twice every single month for the House Hacker Mafia Real Estate Meetup. My name is Tanner. That is Ryan. We are your two hosts, and we are at the Renjoy building, which are short-term rental property managers. And Michael here is going to be speaking today. He is a part of Renjoy, so feel free to ask him any short-term rental questions that you may have. We do meet 6:30 to 8:30, the second and fourth Thursday, like I said earlier. So the 22nd will be our next meeting. Different speakers will come every single time. It's a great place to network, so definitely go out, ask people questions like, hey, how'd you get started in real estate, especially if you're new. Try and meet people, meet other investors, and see what works well for real estate investing here in Colorado Springs. Me and Ryan are both real estate agents and investors and house hackers as well. We both have short-term rentals, so ask us any questions about that you may have. But now I'll give it over to Michael, who is one of the owners of Renjoy. He's going to talk about short-term rentals. He has a ton of them and has some great stories to tell you. So I'll give it up for Michael.
All right. Hey, guys. Michael, I've met a few of you. It's awesome how much this has grown. Luke and I, one of the other co-founders of Renjoy, started the House Hacker Mafia shortly after COVID. Like, all the meetups died and we were bored. And so we're like, we don't know when they're going to open. I know we're waiting for Collins to come back up. I've spoken to his a couple times with you guys. But that's how we got started. We just wanted to meet people that were doing the same thing. We've also moved it around a bunch because I know it's hard when you're always moving locations. We were just trying to find a place that wasn't trying to charge us money, since we weren't making any money off of it. So that's thankfully, we started at Oscar Blues. We got away not getting charged for a while, and then we had enough people show up. It started happening, so then we were at Go Patch, and now we can do it here if, I guess yeah, so yeah, we just wanted to make the group to do this, and I know Jordan helped a bunch, and now Tanner and Ryan are doing a great job, like, helping keeping it going, because the hardest part is like the consistency. Like, it'd always be me and Luke like the night before. I'm like, crap, did you make a presentation? No. Should we get a guest speaker? Like, let's reach out to our lender. And like, she's in Denver. She's probably not gonna make it. So super cool to see this all come together. I'm just gonna kind of go through like my story. Has anyone heard me present before? I know you have. No? Awesome. Good, because I didn't change that much on the from the last time. So I'll start with my story, and then we'll get into like the short-term rental market data, both on a national level and here in the Springs, and some of the surrounding areas like Woodland Park. And then kind of, you know, it was in the news like crazy in 2021, just like Bitcoin. And then the exact opposites happened the last couple of years of like Airbnb bust. Is anyone still making money? Interest rates are through the roof. So I'm just trying to figure out if there's still opportunities and some of the takeaways. So I'll start with my story. This is me and my wife. We got married 8 years ago. We did the American Dream thing where I'm an engineer, she's a nurse. We buy a house that's way too big in the suburbs in Monument and fill our bedrooms with nothing but crap. And then I started listening to Bigger Pockets as I was traveling a lot for work up to North Dakota. My wife got tired of me talking about it all the time. And she said, are we gonna do this, or are you gonna talk about this for like 50 more years? So she was actually the catalyst to get us started. This house and cottage was already under contract downtown, but I found, talking with our agent, I was like, this is perfect. It's a house, it's downtown, I could walk to work, it's got a cottage. We could rent it out long-term or on Airbnb. I really hope we can find something similar. It fell out of contract. James Carlson, if you guys know him, he was actually the agent on it, and he was really trying to convince his clients not to, but they got scared, thankfully for us. We kind of went backwards, right? So we went from 5-bedroom house in Monument to a 3-bedroom house downtown. We got 2 roommates off Craigslist. And we decided to try Airbnb in the cottage. We started it in May, and in that first year, we made $21,000 just out of that cottage in our backyard. And I was like, this is sweet, I'm hooked, as if I wasn't hooked enough from all the podcasts. So we're like, how fast can we do this? So we moved 6 times in 5 years, just trying to buy a new place each time. We would move into it. This one's off 11th Street. We lived in that guest house. It was already converted garage. This one we converted ourselves. Learned a lot there. But we just tried to keep doing it as fast as we could because we're like, this house hacking thing is insane. Like how much it can do to change your life. From the meetup, we actually started meeting with Jacob and Luke. They're my 2 co-founders of Renjoy. None of us wanted to start a short-term rental property management business. I didn't even want to manage my own. So this is a lot of work. Like I started with 1, 2, all of a sudden we're at 8, and we're at 9. We're like, this is starting to be a lot more than like a side job. So through the 3 of us meeting quite often, we started like a little mastermind outside of the meetup, which was awesome. We found this 4-plex off of Pikes Peak Avenue. The owner was in the top left unit. He had like the entire yard, of course, and then there was a hoarder in the bottom unit and a couple other units that were pretty rough. We decided it was short-term rental eligible, and so we put it under contract, got the permits, and started renovation. These photos are literally from today. We just finished turning the 2-car garage into a game room. And we put this mural on the side that AI made for us, even though it's kind of like a deer head with like elk antlers. Not sure how that happened, but kind of noticed that after the fact. So that was the one that we did together. The 3 of us there was 5 of us kind of in this mastermind, and we're like, hey, there's this property for sale. Should we buy it, renovate it? Who's in? Like, let's do it. Like, this would be like the next big thing instead of just doing it all on our own. 3 of us decided to give it a shot, and then we didn't know who was going to manage it. Like, are you going to manage it or you? I had quite a few. Luke and Lexi, they had 5 or 6, and Jacob had about just as many. So we're like, you know what? We're not going to take on external clients. Let's just merge all of ours together. We can share some cleaners, share a handyman, get some like economies of scale with our tech stack. That lasted for like 2 months, and we had enough people asking us to manage theirs, so we decided to like come up with a plan and see if we could start managing for other people. I kind of wanted to get out, but I didn't trust anyone in town to take over them. I didn't want to get hit with a haircut on the management fee and a haircut on like how much revenue each one was bringing in. And like with AirDNA, he's nodding. Like it's the double whammy. Like if you're doing it really well and you hand it off to a property manager and it declines, and you're paying the property manager an extra fee, you're like, dude, this is brutal. So maybe it's a little bit of narcissism, but I was like, okay, we can figure this out. Like let's try to get this going. We started Renjoy. We were in this building down below Paul Mitchell in a basement. We finally upgraded to this little, I don't know, old Jiffy Lube or something. But that's kind of my story, as my background, and kind of where we're at. And then on AirDNA, we're still not the largest in town, but our reviews are better than anyone else. And I wish this showed revenue because that's way more relevant than reviews, but it's not on there unless you pay $1,200 a month for AirDNA's enterprise subscription. So that's kind of our background, and then I'll get into a lot more short-term rental data stuff. We'll start with regulations. There's a lot of different ways these are regulated now. Density is one that we have here for non-owner occupied permits. 500 feet from another non-owner occupied permit. Also being in R2, R4, C5, not single family zoning. So basically all of Rock Rimmond's off limits, Briargate, most stuff off Powers, which kind of limits it to just the downtown Old Colorado City area for getting permits now. I think grandfathering is dumb because it's like the people who got in early get rewarded, and the people who still want to do it aren't kind of a lot harder to get in, but that's just kind of the nature of it. City council is usually trying to appeal like one side while also appealing the other, and they land in the middle. And then full bands, like we've seen up in Woodland Park. They're working with lawyers and all kinds of stuff where they said, you're not even going to get to renew your short-term rental permit. Like, we're just getting rid of them. And so that's a threat. But from what we've seen in most cities like Dallas, a lot of those are starting to reverse. If they went too far on the pendulum one way, they're starting to reverse back the other way. Not New York and LA, but a little bit more reasonable cities like Dallas. Actually, like, surprising they even took that step to full ban and then bringing it back in. Any other ideas on regulations? Doesn't matter if you live there.
500-foot rule.
500-foot rule from another non-owner occupied permit. So that's like,
you live there, you have to live there for 185 days or more, and then the other days you can shorter.
yeah, and then there's no density restriction on that. So we have several clients. My partner's parents-in-law, mother-in-law and father-in-law, they do that exactly. They come here for the winter, get to stay with their family, and then they rent it out all summer, and they have an owner-occupied permit, and that's totally legal. So that part frustrates me because you got Plan COS also saying the same thing. We want more density downtown. We want more ADUs. And then you've got the building department, like, they'll pass certain things, but then the building department's still behind, and they're like, no, you can't have a stove. You're like, but it's now allowed. And there's a lot of not talking between different departments, and then you still end up like kind of in this weird spot where you're not sure if something's even going to work. And that part is kind of scary. So I don't know the resolution on that, but I mean, yeah, you see like states like California said ADUs everywhere, right? Like, regardless of zoning. But then a lot of them, some are like only allowed to be long-term rentals. Some are only allowed to be like family members, which I don't know who many people that want that many family members living that close to them. Sorry, Mom, if you're watching, but I'm not sure exactly on that. Yeah, we've had several people, a couple of my partners too, they short-term rent it when they're there, and then medium-term when you move out, which if it's over 30 days on your night stays, you don't need any permits. You can still list it on Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking, Furnish Finder, which I don't think we've ever had a single person actually convert from Furnish Finder.
You can, it's just not very great.
Oh, everyone's just like tire kickers, and they want to stay for free and bring like 12 cats. I'm like, I know. That's you? Or that you?
No, not 12 cats. I got a Furnish Finder.
Okay. Yeah, we've seen like a lot more, just as Airbnb has become like a household name, like Kleenex. Like, people will just look and book. It's scary. We have probably like 10 medium-term rentals that we manage. The lead time on booking, you'd think it'd be months in advance. It's like a day. Like, someone will book 2-night for 30 days. It's like, ooh. And I've heard the counter of like, well, they didn't plan on their house to flood or something to happen, like a pipe burst in the house or something. So like insurance will help pay for that and move them into those spots. But it's kind of shocking. It's scary seeing your calendar 0 future bookings and then all of a sudden a huge booking come in. But it does happen. And so medium terms can be a good blend because you've already paid for the furniture. You're already like got utilities in your name, trash, internet. Add those things on for a medium-term rental. But I know like Bigger Pockets was pushing it for a while. Ziana came out with her book. I don't know how saturated that part can get either. Because like if everyone went medium term, then like I don't know who would be looking for that. But it's interesting the variety of guests you can get on medium-term rentals, from like military families only here for a couple months. Yeah, if you can do it. It's also interesting too. I'll talk about it in a few slides, but the demand for short-term rentals continues to climb like 15% a year. But the past couple of years, supply outpaced that. So then everyone's revenue's down, and they're like, this sucks. But it's like demand as a whole is increasing a large amount. But when interest rates were super low and there wasn't a lot of regulations in certain cities, like everyone was making them pop up like crazy. So it's starting to like get equalized and have a more consistent rate. And we have a few in like Buena Vista, but we haven't ventured out. Personally, we started pushing in Florida too, because we see a lot of like, even though it's been way more established and there's like 3,000 here and there's like 56,000 between like Tampa and Fort Myers. But our kind of bet on that is the competition's not as fierce. They've been around forever and Pam's still answering the phone and they don't have like automated systems and rental agreements. And like everyone who started in the last 5 or 10 years relied so much on tech, whereas a lot of those systems like don't exist, or they have like 7-day minimums and stuff like that like I don't know how many people want to check in on a Saturday and out on the next Saturday. Like I can't imagine being forced to search like that when I go on vacation instead of like choosing the opposite way. But there probably are still spots you can do that. The ski towns scare me because Vail does not like us. So, and they have more money. And so, yeah. And we see that a lot here too. Like El Paso County as a whole doesn't have any regulations on short-term rentals. So you've got Black Forest, you've got different little pockets. Cimarron Hills is not Colorado Springs, so they don't have the same rules. The regulations get really tricky because each area does them differently. Like some are county-based, like Summit County. Some are like city-based. Some are like different HOA-based or municipality. Or this building has a 7-night minimum. So regulations, we could go on forever on those, but definitely look wherever you're like really looking and like just try to talk to someone who's actually already doing it there. Probably the best way to do it.
I could talk to you all night about this.
Yeah, I could too. Let's go. All right, so I'm going to get into some of the data on a macro level. This is from AirDNA. They're constantly just scraping Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo for data. They're like, what's this guy's rate at? Did he get booked? What's his rate? Did he get booked? And that's all their algorithms doing all day long. And then they sell that data to people who want to know about it. So this one's super interesting. You can see how fast short-term rentals, let's see here, monthly revenue, how much they went up right after COVID. And then you see your mortgage payment, the average mortgage payment for a similar house in that area. And then you can see once interest rates went up, when was that? Early, like spring, wasn't it? Like right after spring. Seeing like that part jump and then like this decline on like how much revenue each one could make played into that. And I think we are finally starting to feel those effects like lagging after that, where 2021 was amazing. I wish we could live that year just over and over with how much revenue short-term rentals made, because a lot of people got out completely when COVID happened, or they switched their property to a long-term rental, and they might have like had that lease go through the next summer, like through the peak booking season, which really kind of handicapped them. So demand skyrocketed and then supply was cut quite a bit. But we're finally starting to see that decline. So that's where we might get more stabilization in that side of things. And then here's available listings. And then the orange is pre-COVID, blue is after COVID. So you can see like listings, the total amount of listings in the United States declined quite a bit. Then they grew like crazy because everyone here made a ton of money, told all their friends. Everyone here started trying to do it. And then here we see a bunch more added. This was last year, still off of kind of this high. At least this is my interpretation of this. And then they're not quite making the same money that they ran their numbers in 2021, bought in 2022, and then they're getting 2023 revenue. And it's not always up and to the right. So we're finally starting to see that come back down. This only goes through October of last year, but it's pretty much flat from here on out on like increased supply. It's like it's increased, but not nearly at the same rate it has been. Now we're going to get into just Colorado Springs. So these are just listings in Colorado Springs that are active by bedroom size. So where short-term rentals are still allowed to be permitted if you meet certain requirements. It's downtown Oak Grove City, predominantly Ivywild area as well, but like it's way easier to add supply in those areas, and they're all smaller houses. And so you'll see here like the 5-6 bedrooms, like there's almost like no increase in supply there. And so like I wish I owned some of those, but I don't. I have all smaller units, but our clients that have ones that are big and grandfathered in Rock Rimmon, in Briargate, over off Powers, those like 5-6 bedroom homes are getting way higher revenue year over year. And ours are finally staying like pretty much flat, like in the 2-3 bedroom range, because the supply has increased a lot more on those smaller ones than it has on the big ones. So like if you're going into a market, there's so much nuance you could look at. Like if you average that out, you're like, oh, it's all going up and to the right. It's like, no. 1 bedrooms has declined because it's so easy to add one in your basement or in a guest house. And then 5-6 bedrooms have skyrocketed because demand continues to increase, but the supply is not increasing. So like in each area, it could be super niche. The Colorado Springs short-term rental ordinance doesn't allow permitting a new short-term rental in an R1 zoning, which is most of the city. Like anything new. Not everywhere. There's just Colorado Springs, and so yeah. Anyone have any questions on some of the things so far? Not hedge funds. I know companies that are trying to do it and then sell to a hedge fund, but they haven't made it that far yet. Yeah, and they're actually just like, they're raising funds, buying the homes, turning it into a Dave & Buster's. They have full control, right? And they have pickleball courts, and they know, they have all this data, so they're like, we know the big ones we don't have to compete with the hotels. If we find a place that permits are eligible, like they're able to like, that's where we see it happening like at a larger scale, but not massive scale yet. Is that happening here? Not yet. No, I thought the permits make it so hard here, whereas you can do that in so many like small towns or certain areas outside of them. This is demand over time. So I guess what I'm just trying to show here, you see the summers of peak demand, and then listing days booked and booked listings. So the number of booked listings, and then the number of nights booked or days booked for each month. You can see it just continues, even just looking at the Julys, continues to go up. January, February is brutal. Who here has a short-term rental currently? Yeah, winters just suck. We're too far from the ski resorts. You're just kind of hoping summer comes back around. So it's just showing that demand is continuing to rise like locally in our city. This is the average revenue per listing per month over the last 4 years. So you can see 2021 was the highest. It's not showing all of 2021, but here in red. 2022 was still doing pretty good, and then 3 dropped a lot. And then everyone's like, man, it's been down 2 years in a row. How much lower can it go? Like, how am I supposed to make rental projections off of like 2 years of decline in a row? And then 2024, we saw it kind of bouncing in between 2022 and 2023, which was great. And then I don't know what happened here in May, but apparently maybe people were leaving their rates too high and getting too much vacancy. But most of my units are up over 2023, so I'm not sure why Colorado Springs as a whole was down for average rental revenue per listing. I'll cruise through here. This is showing it again by bedroom. So pink is these 6 bedrooms. They're just crushing it. It's also interesting to see the delta. So if you're looking at a different market, and the way my wife and I chose our first place in Florida was, where are these spreads massive? Because the cost of the house probably isn't that different from certain bedroom sizes. So like in Florida, where we bought our first one, there there was a huge gap when you went from like 4 to 6 bedrooms, or even 4 to 5 bedrooms. Like there was a ton of 3 and 4 bedroom places, and then you saw the revenue for like 5 and 6, and it was like both of those lines were both like vastly ahead of the other ones. And so that's something you could look at if you were looking in different areas of like seeing, is there a big delta that you could try to take advantage of that maybe someone else doesn't see. Personally, we've shifted to trying to balance out our cash flow because like it's just so roller coastery. Probably not. Not if I already had a bunch. Yeah. 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 It's harder to find because I hate. Yeah. 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 And then like a deep dive into like one specific market. Like the blog posts that say like this is the top plate from AirDNA to invest, it's like they're so averaged. It's like, wait a second, like what size, how close to the beach or the mountain or the lake, like you can get really niche. And it can sound intimidating, but my favorite part about it is like it's more in your control to like beat the game, or like you play the game and like beat the person next to you. Like, I don't know. The hard part to me was like a long-term rental was like I can't do that much to improve the performance of it. It's like it's occupied or it's not. And granite and stainless versus laminate and white, like your deltas aren't that big. So like there's not a lot you can do. Like you can't put in like a bunch of like photoshopped images on Airbnb and like trick someone into renting it for like $3,000 a month instead of $2,400. That's Tanner. Tanner's living in the basement of a mansion right now, and we're renting out the rest of it. And you're paying down so much more debt per month.
And the reason I did it is because of that pink line.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be more, you can make more money.
So sure we test the pink line.
Yeah, it's in the works. Printing.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that stood out to me from, I didn't listen to a whole lot of the podcast once like David Green was running everything. But one thing I liked like right at the end of him and Brandon was like, they asked him like, if you had to start over, what would you do? He was like, I would buy the biggest, most expensive house I could afford and house hack it. And there's just more debt. But he lives in California, so it's also like very location based, right? Like, but it's just interesting. You also get the other leverages of real estate instead of just revenue. You're getting massive debt pay down, and then appreciation on a bigger number is bigger, right? So like affecting your net worth a lot more. Yeah, actually, let me see if I can get there. Let me just kind of skip around here. This was just one screenshot I took from AirDNA. This was just 1 bedrooms. No, it wasn't 1 bedrooms. This was just sorted by the number of reviews. And here's our little 1 bedroom guest house. And I thought this was super interesting because I was just trying to like get the screenshot I wanted, and it ended up not being what I wanted. But here you've got a 3.2 that made 50K and our 1.1 at 48. So it just shows like if you're a really good operator, you can like beat other people in revenue that you couldn't do long term. This is AirDNA. Yes, this is actually how I got started. I was just like nerding out, and I was like, "Oh, this girl's crushing it." And I just copied everything she did. I was like, "There's no point in reinventing the wheel." I finally met her like a year ago, and I'm like, "You're the reason, and you did really well."